It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
There's definitely instances where FOMO drives a market where there's low stock and high demand, and we are seeing evidence of that here in Brisbane. And the number of registered bidders has remained relatively firm over several months, but the fact that that auction clearance rate is now increasing perhaps tells us a little more about sellers' expectations, in that the sellers are now starting to meet the market.
And that is Melinda Jennison this morning, and welcome back to your real estate channel as we break down for you the Australian property market. Always something to talk about, always something to break down. And we do it every morning, 7 days a week. Monday is gone. Time to focus on our Tuesday, August the 5th. Now, when we talk about first home buyers, most of us think about younger buyers, don't we? But remember, there are older first home buyers. In fact, quite a lot in their late 40s. Then you've got those that are in their 50s and even in their 60s. And the ABC, they ran a story, you might have seen this, about Patricia, who bought a little corner house in a country town 8 years ago for just over 200 grand. But after health issues forced her to quit her supermarket job, she fell behind on mortgage repayments, surviving on Centrelink payments of just $384 a fortnight. Gee, that's pretty tough, isn't it? And at 68, Patricia faces the heartbreaking reality of potentially selling her beloved home, where she lives quietly these days with her 4 cats. And despite reducing repayments to $1,000 a month, arrears kept on growing. Her bank, and I really hate the fact that they even proposed this, but they suggested selling it. But Patricia says that her house is adapted for her needs, and that is where she belongs in life. Imagine out on the street at 68 years of age. However, after media attention, this is the good bit, her story got out. As a result, the bank suddenly changed their tune. They offered to extend her loan terms and lower her repayments. And the good news is, Patricia, is that we are expecting from the RBA a cash rate reduction, and we'll have that news for you later on this afternoon from Anthony Landau, who is going to be here from Sydney. So let's go right now to Brisbane and catch up with Melinda Jennison, a buyer's agent there. Hey, that was a happy ending, for Patricia, but it's not an isolated case. There are many, many women in the same situation, and you are helping an organisation yourself there in Brisbane.
Yes, look, myself and our business are getting behind the Forgotten Women charity, and they have a mission to provide safe housing for vulnerable women over the age of 55 years who are facing the exact circumstances that Patricia faces. That is, they're looking down, the potential pathway of homelessness, which is a growing concern for our community.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about this organisation and why you felt compelled to get in behind this, because I can tell you there's a lot of people that work in the real estate industry. They're just so busy, they just don't have the time. That's the reason. You've made the time, so all kudos to you and your business for getting in behind them.
I agree, and I think it comes down to priorities. I think as a business, we see daily how secure housing can transform lives. And for us, it's not just about bricks and mortar. It's actually about safety, it's about dignity, and it's about opportunity. And sadly, for many women, particularly those fleeing things like domestic violence or those facing financial hardship, stable housing becomes out of reach. So the Forgotten Women charity provides crisis accommodation and transitional housing, and it provides an opportunity for those that are most vulnerable in our population. And you're right, we have dedicated our time and we are, trying to get the message out as far as we can. We are going to Live Like Her. We're participating in the Live Like Her challenge, where we'll actually be spending a night sleeping in our cars to raise awareness of the forgotten women. These are our aunts, they're our mothers, they're our sisters, they're our daughters. They're people just like us that find themselves challenged when it comes to affordable housing.
Now, I was going to ask you, have you ever slept in your car, maybe as a teenager when you were super young, but hey, that is a completely different experience to doing that as an adult. But what a great way to sort of highlight the fact that this is just how difficult it is for these people.
Yeah, so have I ever slept in my car? Look, not intentionally. And I think this is one of the reasons why we really wanted to participate in this fundraising event. It's not easy to sleep in a car, especially when you may be in an environment that may be unfamiliar to you. You may not know the neighbourhood. For the challenge, obviously, we're going to be in a safe environment. So it's not going to replicate the enormity of the situation that these vulnerable women do face. But obviously, it's a cause that resonates deeply with myself and also our business, Streamline Property Buyers, because it reflects the essence of what we do every single day, and that's advocating for people, protecting their interests, and also understanding that everyone deserves a safe place to call home.
So what is the website, Melinda, where people can go and get connected?
So the Live Like Her Challenge is just livelikeherchallenge.com.au. We're actually involved with Team REIQ. And if you Google my own name, Melinda Jennison, you can make a donation towards this cause.
Now, I mentioned at the top that there are older first home buyers, late 40s, they are in their 50s and unbelievably in their 60s. How many of these older buyers have you been seeing, and is there or has there been an uptick in inquiries from older buyers?
Typically, a lot of the older women that might be challenged in terms of accommodation are not necessarily looking to purchase a home. They may be looking to rent a home. And the complexity around that in today's market is that we have such low vacancy rates, especially here in Brisbane, that there's a lot of competition for investment properties. And therefore, the landlord needs to approve a tenant from a volume of tenants that might apply for that property. For some vulnerable women that may not have a rental history because they're coming out of a relationship that they've been in for such a long period of time, they might not have strength in their application, and so the application is denied. And this is the real challenge that people face when they are in this vulnerable age group and they find themselves in this situation.
And I mentioned that Patricia might have some great news coming up tomorrow with the RBA. What do you think is likely to happen? You know, plenty of people weighing in on which way this might go down. Do you think there's a possibility that the governor might go for the 50 basis points, which would be fantastic?
Yeah, look, I think that the monthly inflation figures have been slowing. And in fact, annually, it's the lowest rate that we've seen since early 2021. Obviously, that gives further incentive for the governor to cut rates at least 25 basis points, but perhaps a little higher. But yeah, time will tell, and hopefully we'll see some positive news for those that hold a mortgage or looking to get into the property market.
And make sure that you follow the Real Estate Podcast to get the latest news on that RBA decision, which is coming out later on this afternoon. We are talking to Melinda Jennison. When we come back, we're going to be having a look at those Brisbane units and how much they are outpacing the market. We'll do that next.
We dive deep into topics like buying, selling, investing, and maximising your property's value, from mortgage advice to the latest property data and trending numbers. Your real estate journey starts here.
And let's talk about the off-plan buyers. They're now also struggling to sell. It's the Sydney apartment market, particularly properties bought off the plan several years ago.
Oh, look, we do see that day to day. We obviously watch listings very carefully, and what we're seeing in that, particularly that higher density locations around Sydney, the newer and, newish properties are really struggling, because I always liken it to buying a new car. As soon as you drive it off the forecourt, it actually loses a percentage in its value straight away. And I don't think most property buyers realize that when they're going for the shiny new off the plan properties marketed to them.
Listen to expert perspectives with exclusive real estate conversations and supercharge your knowledge base with us.
And it's Real Estate Tuesday, RBA Decision Day today, as we continue to talk about Brisbane's property market with Melinda Jennison. Want to talk about Brisbane apartment market, which is running ahead of detached homes in terms of growth. So let's talk about what is fueling this shift towards the units and what that is doing to the market in terms of pressure.
Yes, it's definitely a different trend here in Brisbane because national data reveals a divergence between house and unit performance, but houses are generally outperforming units across most capital city markets. That's not the case here in Brisbane when we're looking at monthly, quarterly and annual growth. In the unit market, Brisbane is definitely outperforming the house market. And just to give some numbers, annually, we've seen houses grow 6.7% here in Brisbane, whereas units have grown 10.6%. So you can see just how far ahead the unit market has pushed. A lot of this is due to affordability constraints. Right now in Brisbane, median values for a house have pushed above that $1 million price point, sitting just under $1,020,000 according to Cotality data, whereas units, the median value is currently $727,000. And it's also due to first home buyer incentives, whereby most of those do cut off at $700,000 being the threshold here in Brisbane. So again, that does actually shift a lot of demand into that space and that segment of the market.
Gee, those numbers are quite revealing. And let's have a look at the auction clearance rates. They are climbing in Brisbane. So what are you seeing on the ground? How is the buyer sentiment evolving? And is the competition between bidders starting to heat up again? Dare I say, is FOMO starting to show signs at any point?
Look, there's definitely instances where FOMO drives a market where there's low stock and high demand, and we are seeing evidence of that here in Brisbane. With those auctions, we've had some consistent bidding activity in Brisbane, but bidders must be registered to actually raise the paddle. And the number of registered bidders has remained relatively firm over several months. But the fact that that auction clearance rate is now increasing perhaps tells us a little more about sellers' expectations, in that the sellers are now starting to meet the market. We're seeing more buyers meet the sellers' expectations. So sometimes those auction clearance rates are a reflection of a seller not willing to let the property go for the price that the buyers may be bidding up to, more so than a lack of buyer interest.
All right, we'll wrap it up there, Melinda. So good to find out what is happening in the Brisbane market from you. It is a very busy market at the moment in 2025. Thanks again for making the time to come back on the Real Estate Breakfast. Enjoy your Tuesday and, of course, look forward to that announcement from the RBA.
Thanks so much for having me again. It's been a pleasure.
But I want people not to panic too much, because when they hear the $1 million median price, they immediately think, now I need $1 million to buy somewhere to live. And that's not true.
I want to pick up on a hot pick right now for first home buyers. We know that you're listening to the podcast. You're always after, where's that area that I can get into? Margaret, you have got a pick for us this morning.
Inner city suburbs of Melbourne like Essendon, Brunswick and Coburg, you can actually get units there for $570,000 average price, as you can in inner East Brisbane for around $510,000. But if you're after a house at the moment, still Melton, which is right smack bang in the middle of significant infrastructure plans out to the west of Melbourne, median price of a 3-bedroom house, just $489,000. What's not to like about that?
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.